Teachers, unions, students and retired people are mobilising in Ecuador against President Guillermo Lasso's neoliberal policies. Peruvian Prime Minister Guido Bellido has resigned, meaning President Pedro Castillo will have to announce a new cabinet. The World Health Organization has recommended the widespread rollout of the first malaria vaccine in a move experts hope could save tens of thousands of children's lives each year across Africa. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Ecuador, where teachers' unions, students and retired people are mobilizing this Wednesday against the government of Conservative President Guillermo Lasso. Among the demands is for the Lasso administration to stop its cuts to the public education budget. Protesters are also demanding the government pay the state's debt to the Ecuadorian Social Security Institute for their 40% contribution to pensions. In addition, demonstrators are calling for the regulation of fuel prices, which have risen sharply. In addition, the mobilizations denounce the use of tax havens by President Lasso, as revealed in the recent publications of the Pandora Papers investigation.
Nothing has been said about how to recover the $7.5 billion owed by financial groups as part of the tax evasion. Nothing has been said about the reduction of private banking interests. Nothing has been said about how more than $30 billion held by private companies in tax havens are going to be recovered, and using as a pretext the provision of employment to the 5,400,000 Ecuadorians who do not have work. They want to create new salaried slaves. That is, 5 million salaried slaves through reforms or a labor proposal different from the rights established in the labor code. Job opportunities must be provided as established by the International Labour Organization, also known as decent jobs, meaning the right to fair wages, job stability, retirement rights, occupational health care, freedom of association, and the right to collective bargaining. However, in the proposed law of opportunities, which is only an opportunity for economic groups to overexploit workers, seeking to eliminate workers' rights.
The latest polls show that former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva would win the 2022 presidential election. Research conducted to test 8 different first-round election scenarios, with 4 possible candidates in each, saw Lula come well ahead of all his rivals. Current President Jair Bolsonaro and former Minister Ciro Gomes were among the candidates presented to those polled. While Lula secured 43 to 46% support, Bolsonaro's support ranged from 24 to 27% and Gomes from 9 to 12%. In a second-round test, Lula also came ahead with 53% support. The research was based on more than 2,000 face-to-face interviews between September 30th and October 3rd. Opposition lawmakers in Chile are set to present a formal accusation in Parliament that could lead to the removal of President Sebastián Piñera following the revelations of the Pandora Papers investigation that he used offshore companies in the British Virgin Islands for dealings involving the Dominga mining project, which his family co-owned in part with a friend.
In the meeting held by the opposition sectors, we agreed to file a constitutional accusation against President Sebastián Piñera. The reasons and grounds of these accusations are based on having violated the principle of integrity established in Article 8 and also for seriously compromising the honor of the country. Our encouragement and our spirit is that this accusation will be presented next week, and we will do everything for that to happen effectively.
Around 200 indigenous Peruvians have taken over the facilities of a pipeline station of the state-owned Peru company as part of a protest by Amazonian communities demanding better economic and social support in the area. The company claimed in a statement that residents in the Mansarichi district of northern Peru's Loreto region had invaded Station 5 of the pipeline, which had caused the company to stop pumping oil. The pipeline transports crude oil from the northern jungle regions to a refinery on the Pacific coast. Amazonian indigenous communities had previously carried out blockades and seizures of oil pipeline stations. President Pedro Castillo has pledged to redistribute mineral wealth in Peru and promised to give historically marginalized indigenous groups a louder voice in economic development. On Wednesday, the 15th session of the UN Conference on Trade and Development opened, hosted by Barbados. Secretary-General Antonio Guterres stressed that this year he expects the world economy to grow between 5 and 6% and contrasted this with the enormous inequality that exists between countries. He made references to the fact that decades of hard-earned progress in development are slipping away from everyone's sight as the world faces several major challenges. And addressing the event, Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, reiterated the condemnation of the economic blockades imposed by the United States and other wealthy nations against Venezuela and other countries that do not respond to their interests. She also stressed that the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the unsustainability and economic inequality of the international system.
If the COVID-19 pandemic has shown anything, it is the economic, ecological, and ethical unsustainability of the international system, the profound injustice and inequality of the current world order. According to Oxfam, 26 of the richest people in the world have the same wealth as half of the world population, and the 10 richest men in the world could increase their combined wealth by $540 billion during the pandemic in the year 2020. While food is wasted in developed countries, hunger affects 800 million people in the world, according to FAO figures.
The Venezuelan Vice President also noted that her country joins the call of voices around the world to correct the unfair distribution of international resources to address the effects of the pandemic.
The World Health Organization has reported that, as of today, more than 6.2 billion doses of vaccine have been administered worldwide, but more than 73% of these have been administered in only 10 countries. High-income countries have administered 61 times more doses per inhabitant than low-income countries. In this sense, Venezuela joins the repeated call of different voices in the world to correct the unfair distribution of the special drawing rights of the International Monetary Fund to address the effects of the pandemic.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Peruvian Prime Minister Guido Bellido has resigned just 2 months into President Pedro Castillo's administration. President Castillo announced on Wednesday that he had accepted the resignation of his Prime Minister and that he would be swearing in a new cabinet at 8 p.m. local time. Bellido was little known before taking up the role and, like all the ministers of the new administration, had been met with right-wing opposition in Congress. With his departure, what is called a total cabinet crisis is generated, as indicated in Article 133 of the Political Constitution of Peru. This implies that all ministers present their respective resignations and President Castillo will have to choose a new ministerial team. Residents of a Chilean fishing village known as a wildlife paradise are protesting against the Domingo mining project, which the Pandora Papers revealed is linked to President Sebastián Piñera. Residents of the village of Punta de Choros stress the mining project threatens the local environment and their livelihoods. According to the Pandora Papers, President Sebastián Piñera sold the Domingo Mining Company in 2010 through a company owned by his children. As part of the sale, a controversial clause was included that conditioned the final payment for the operation to not establishing an area of environmental protection in the area of operations of the mining company, as demanded by environmental groups. The revelations show not only the money secretly made by the president in such business dealings, but also the wider consequences for Chile's biodiversity.
This company wants to settle in a place that is a treasure of global importance from the point of view of biodiversity. Scientists around the world have said that there is no place like this on the planet, and that means that there is a unique diversity that lives there. Many species that are threatened, some even in danger of extinction. But it is not only biodiversity, but it also has to do with local productive activity. We have economic development, but it is mainly our lifestyle. We live off the resources of the sea, of nature. A mining company is destruction. There is no sustainable mining company in the country. Even if they say that they are coming to install a mining company that is friendly to the environment, that is totally false.
As Europe sees rising energy costs in Spain, it was announced that the price of electricity will reach a new high on Thursday. The new rate, which exceeds €288 per megawatt hour, is €60 higher than the previous day's rate. The increase of 26% in one day is the highest wholesale market rate rise in the history of Spain. In the case of Spain, gas is a disproportionate burden on the electricity bill because the price of this technology, the most expensive that enters the daily electricity auction, is the same as the price paid for other technologies, including those that are much cheaper to produce, such as hydroelectric power. However, this is not a domestic problem as all European economies are suffering from higher consumer bills. Spain has already taken some measures, such as tax cuts and elimination of extra payments for non-polluting technologies, measures some other neighbouring countries have also implemented. And 5 European Union countries, France, Spain, the Czech Republic, Romania and Greece, issued a joint communiqué to suggest investigating the causes of record high gas prices in Europe. The 5 countries also urged the establishment of common gas purchasing rules to mitigate the dramatic increases in gas prices and called for greater coordination in gas purchases to increase common bargaining power. They also call for a reform of the EU wholesale electricity market in order to better establish a link between the price paid by consumers and the average production cost of electricity. Gas prices in Europe during trading on October 5th set several all-time records.
We're under strong pressure, but this is why we have to first have short-term answers at a national and European level. But as well, we have to build our capacity to be less dependent. And I think everybody now can completely identify the fact that when we speak about sovereignty, it means exactly that. Being sovereign means being less dependent on the others, and it's critical for us.
The U.S. Department of Commerce announced that in August, the U.S. trade deficit grew to a record high of $73.3 billion, up 4.2% on the previous month. So far this year, the increase is 33.7% compared to the same period in 2020. As for the trading partners with which Washington has the largest deficit, the first is China, with which it has a deficit of $28.1 billion, representing 38% of the debt, followed by the European Union at $19.3 billion and Mexico at $6.6 billion. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The World Health Organization has recommended the widespread rollout of the first malaria vaccine in a move experts hope could save tens of thousands of children's lives each year across Africa. The recommendation is based on results from an ongoing pilot program in Ghana, Kenya and Malawi that has reached more than 800,000 children since 2019. Malaria remains a primary cause of childhood illness and death in sub-Saharan Africa. More than 260,000 African children under the age of 5 die from malaria each year. In recent years, the WHO and its partners have been reporting a stagnation in progress against the deadly disease. Based on the advice of 2 WHO global advisory bodies, the organisation now recommends the use of the RTSS malaria vaccine in children living in regions with moderate to high transmission as defined by the WHO. The organisation stresses the vaccine is safe, highly cost-effective and can ensure greater equity in access to malaria prevention.
This long-awaited malaria vaccine is a breakthrough for science, child health, and malaria control. Using this vaccine in addition to existing tools to prevent malaria could save tens of thousands of young lives each year. As some of you may know, I started my career as a malaria researcher, and I longed for the day that we would have an effective vaccine against this ancient and terrible disease. And today is that day, an historic day. This recommendation is based on results from an ongoing pilot program in Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi that has reached more than 800,000 children since 2019.
Speaking during a UN Security Council meeting this Wednesday, Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that Ethiopia is facing an immense humanitarian crisis and called for authorities to grant unhindered access to international aid, a week after the country expelled 7 UN officials.
The country is facing an immense humanitarian crisis that demands immediate attention. All efforts should be squarely focused on saving lives and avoiding a massive human tragedy. This makes last Thursday's announcement by the government of Ethiopia to expel 7 senior UN officials, most of them humanitarian staff, particularly disturbing.
United Nations officials have received increasing reports of the use of child soldiers as well as abduction and sexual violence by extremist groups in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado region. A UNICEF report stressed that the recruitment and use of children by armed groups destroys families and communities. The recruitment and use of children is a grave violation of international law. Officials believe that thousands of children are at risk in part of the territory of northern Mozambique controlled by extremist groups. Despite humanitarian access improving gradually in Cabo Delgado, no abducted children have been released. Unverified video material secured by armed forces in an abandoned training camp shows abducted children as young as 5 years old handling weapons and being indoctrinated to fight. In Argentina, volunteers have teamed up with emergency response teams and firefighters battling the wildfires that have broken out in the northern province of Córdoba. The advance of the flames has affected several departments of the province. 4 hydrant planes and a helicopter assisted around 400 firefighters battling to put out the flames. The head of the fire has an extension of 900 metres, while the left and right flanks stretch 3,000 metres each. Personnel from 9 volunteer fire brigades travelled to the site, as well as members of the Provincial Fire Management Plan and Civil Protection, in order to support the efforts. At least 2 people have been killed in the blazes.
We are in danger because of this fire. This fire is dangerous if the wind continues like this, and it will reach us. We are working intensively with more than 457 personnel deployed, mobile units with forestry equipment to work in places that are difficult to access, and we will continue to do so. Beyond that, the weather, by the way, is playing decidedly against the possibilities of extinguishing this fire.
The United States Coast Guard is investigating a possible anchor strike as the cause of a broken pipeline that has spewed tens of thousands of gallons of crude oil into the sea off California. Emergency responders reported that more than 100,000 gallons of fuel have spilled into the sea, home to seals, dolphins and whales, since the pipeline ruptured at the weekend. A 24-kilometre stretch of coastline has been closed to the public, and fishing has been halted as crews scramble to clean up one of California's biggest oil spills in decades. The Coast Guard is trying to determine if a large commercial ship set anchor in the wrong place and damaged the pipeline. The disaster has had a major impact on local wildlife, especially birds. This Wednesday marks the 45th anniversary of the terrorist attack on a Cuban plane which killed all 73 on board, known as the Crime of Barbados. On October 6, 1976, a Cubana de Aviación aircraft exploded mid-flight as a result of an attack orchestrated by Cuban-born terrorists Luis Posada Carriles and Orlando Bosch Avila. The plane was en route from Barbados to Jamaica, with final destination in Havana. The crime is one of the most brutal terrorist attacks carried out by CIA agents against the Cuban Revolution. Among the 73 people killed were 57 Cubans, 11 Guyanese students and 5 Korean artists. Among the Cuban victims were the members of the national youth fencing team, who are returning home from Venezuela after winning medals at the Central American and Caribbean Fencing Championships. They were 24 athletes who were barely 20 years old. For Cubans, they are martyrs of the battle that the island has fought against terror.
Millones de cubanos lloramos hoy junto a los seres queridos de las víctimas del abominable crimen. Y cuando un pueblo enérgico y viril llora, la injusticia tiembla. Patria o muerte, venceremos.
And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and you can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.